Did you see Chappell Roan's statement on people being parasocial? Wasn't someone like stalking her or whatever? It's pronounced Chappell, not Chappelle like Dave Chappelle. For the past 10 years, I've been going nonstop to build my project, and it's come to the point that I need to draw lines and set boundaries. I want to be an artist for a very, very long time. I've been in too many non-consensual physical and social interactions, and I just need to lay it out and remind you, women don't owe you shit. I chose this career path because I love music and art, honoring my inner child, and I do not accept harassment of any kind because I chose this path, nor do I deserve it. When I'm on stage, a lot of words. I'm specifically talking about predatory behavior disguised as superfan behavior that has become normalized because the way women who are well known have been treated in the past. Please do not assume you know a lot about someone's life, personality, and boundaries because you're familiar with them or their work online. Please stop touching me. Please stop being weird to my family and friends. I mean, I can't even say anything about this because it's so, like, obviously true, right? Like, yeah, of course, obviously. Right? How do I comment on it? Like, how do I... There's not really, like, an angle. It's just, it's, like, clearly clear, you know? Vosh, you regularly harassed in person? No, I mean, normally when people identify me in public, it's like, oh, hey, are you Vosh? And then they take a picture with me or whatever. People aren't normally weird, so it's not a big dealio. But obviously, I'm not Chappell Roan. This is how Vosh feels whenever he gets an email more than a paragraph long. That is true. That is true. If I saw Vosh in public and making a horse joke, see, I don't want that. I don't want that, though. You shouldn't do that. I want to see you in public. I don't want to see you in public, Kenneth Allen Cook. Your message rate, you'd talk a lot. How do you want to be interacted with when you're spotted IRL? I don't want anyone who had asked me that question to interact with me IRL, because the answer should be obvious, right? Like, just act like with a normal person. It's not, I don't know. People get really weird about this stuff. For me, one of the biggest red flags when I'm having a social interaction with a fan of mine is when they make like an in-joke from the community. Don't talk to me about that shit. Like from the stream. What you don't understand is I interact with my content very differently to the way you do. I don't watch my videos. I don't watch my streams. I produce my streams, you know? So in jokes about like my community or like bits or gags or whatever, I don't like, these don't register with me. People are like, oh, this video, that event, this era, this arc, none of this registers with me. You know, I'm on a log floating down the river, you know, I'm in the present moment. I don't go back and experience previous moments, you know? So horse jokes though. Yeah. If you knew any jokes, none of you do, you know, references, worthless, scary movie tier humor. You don't have the sauce. I assume it's also probably worse for Chappell Roan, at least to some extent, because a lot of her fan base is made up of two groups of people who often engage in weird and kind of harassy behavior, even if they're aware of the fact that they shouldn't, which is gay men and women. You know, it's one of the reasons where, like, if you're a guy and you go to a strip club and you're looking at a girl stripping and you touch the girl, you're going to get decked by a bouncer in a lot of places. I mean, obviously it varies, not all cases, but chicks touch guy strippers all the time, and guys touch guy strippers all the time at like gay bars and stuff. A lot of that crap, you know. Because there's that feeling of like the idea that predation is a straight guy thing, which, let's be clear, it often is. But because they think that, they're like, oh, well, it's different because Chappell Roan is like a lesbian and I'm a lesbian. So it's like, girls, you know, it's not the same as if like a guy went up and touched her on the shoulder. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, right? There are a lot of people who think like this, unfortunately. It's very regrettable. Yeah, they think that because the double standard, they're like, well, it's different. I'm not the perceived threat. And yeah, I admit I would perceive it differently if someone tapped me on the shoulder and they were like a big guy versus a flighty, queer-looking chick. But I think that difference would fade really quickly if it happened to me a lot. Does that make any sense? Like, day one of the person who inappropriately taps me on the shoulder is actually like a little like gay chick or whatever. Oh, okay. Day 500 of it being the little gay chick, and I'm like swinging back on like reflex now. I feel like that would get old very quickly, you know? Which is weird because there are plenty of lesbians who are terrified of making women uncomfortable with flirting too. Oh, sure. I'm not besmirching all lesbians or whatever. I'm just saying that I know it can be a thing where women and gay men don't think of themselves as being part of the problem because they're already aware of or critical of gender or sexuality stuff that makes them think like, oh, well, I wouldn't be like that guy, And sometimes they really aren't, Maybe sometimes as a consequence of that demographic distinction, they are able to better navigate those situations and make people feel comfortable, That's not impossible. That can be done. I think you can do that as like a straight guy too or whatever. I'm just saying it's not it's good to lean on the side of caution, right? I mean, you don't want to make somebody that you respect online feel uncomfortable. That'd be pretty bad. That's not good. I think we, the lesbian community, overcorrected our tendency to feel like predators, and now there are a lot of lesbians who are total creeps because we're not men, so it's not predatory. Domestic abuse is pretty common in lesbian relationships. A lot of it is just because we don't really take violence seriously unless it happens from men, And obviously, yeah, the average guy is a lot more physically destructive than the average chick. That is true. That is true. But also, like, doesn't matter too much on the principle of it, right? Like, you shouldn't hit people you're in a relationship with. It shouldn't hit people generally, I don't think, unless they really deserve it. But that's probably not taking place in the context of your relationship. What if they're literally Hitler? If you wake up one day and realize that your domestic other is in fact literally Hitler, then I think the situation's kind of complicated, and history might vindicate you for the choices you make that day. How did you end up there? Fugue state. You're at the club and you hear this guy talking about how he hates Israel, and you were like, ooh, a based pro-Palestinian anti-Zionist, and you wake up the next morning with a splitting headache next to Adolf Hitler, and you're like, what did Vosh say? Don't just agree on the problem, agree on the solution. And my solution to this problem is not final. And you got to kick him out of the bed. Hey, and if you're masked, you should demand people respect your boundaries. True. Oh, 100%, 100%. Yeah. Yeah. One of the biggest problems with, like, because I don't want to make this out to be like, women get away with the double standard. One of the biggest problems is that men are too prideful to enforce the boundary, If you're a guy and a chick is making you feel uncomfortable, you should absolutely put that bitch in her place, okay? You can be real self-righteous about it too if she's being like aggro or whatever. Like, yeah, don't, because a lot of guys want to be like, oh yeah, I would never be bothered by a female imposing herself in my terrain. That would actually, if anything, it's laughable to me that a female would think that she could threaten me. It's like, dude, come off it. If chicks like bothering you or making you uncomfortable, like, you have to say it. If you don't say it, then you can't complain about the double standard because you're kind of like establishing it through your behavior, right? Gay men often have a weird lack of boundaries with people too. 100%, yes, 100%. Look, okay, being weird to people is a general problem that anyone can do or suffer from. We just need to be consistent in, like, keeping an eye out for it. That's it. Uh-oh, that was a victim blaming. Don't you start with me. Victim blaming would be me saying that the guy is asking for it or deserves it or whatever if he doesn't call out the behavior. I'm saying that if you, as a guy who is being bothered but refuses to say that the woman is bothering you, don't say it, and like that's just a thing you don't do, you don't acknowledge when women are making you uncomfortable, you are literally establishing the double standard. Like you are like, there is a standard you're not enforcing selectively. Like that's not blaming you for it, but like you should obviously say that, right? It was meant to be read more facetious. Okay, it's just text. I'm just reading text. I don't know. You people are freaks. What if I was confused, not bothered? Well, that's fine, I guess. I don't think that you're obligated to, like, in retrospect, feel bad if somebody violated your boundaries or whatever. Having your boundaries violated is kind of a part of life, and I don't mean getting raped or whatever. I mean, like, a person standing too close to you sometimes or whatever. That's kind of like that. Like, obviously, past a certain point, we're dealing with just the innate agitation of living as a social being, right? I don't like, express your boundaries when you feel appropriate and try to stand up for yourself. Probably, like, don't be so defensive and reflexive to the point that you're causing agitation where it doesn't exist. You're presuming the worst of people. That's kind of like an individual case thing, that only you can decide what the right point is or what your comfort levels are. Chat's engaging in a lot of crosstalk that would not fly at a bus stop, I can tell you that much. Vosh, do you acknowledge the men adhere to the double standard for reason other than blind pride? Don't you get defensive with me. Like, I've gotten weird shit from a ton of people and didn't react because I didn't want to cause a scene, make myself look scary, emotional. Others, I'm adhering to the standards, but not for reason like, yeah, there's a social pressure to it too, but like past a point, we have to be masters of our own fate, right? Like, women face a lot of social pressure too when it comes to, like, looking stuck up or like a prude or whatever. I don't know. Like I acknowledge that there are reasons. I guess I just think the world would be a better place if people were a lot more upfront about this sort of thing. I don't know. That's the autism. I don't really think it's just the autism thing. I think it's just like a lot of people are really cowardly. I think that I think that this could be like a social differentiation thing, you know? I think that people tend to be a lot more outward with their feelings on these subjects in certain parts of the world and less so here. I don't know if it's like like a cultural thing or a material development thing, like you get wealthy enough and you start getting really uptight about what car the neighbors are driving and you start getting really passive aggressive about shit. I have no idea. I don't know. That's a whole subject that I'm not familiar with. But a lot of people are real bitches, that's what I'm saying. Pogfield, I feel like I talk about misogyny pretty often.